Are we live?
There you go.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Public Works Committee meeting, December 7th, 2021. I apologize for the time. It is 3:04. Our finance meeting has run late as usual. Our committee meetings are really getting too packed at this point. Present here today is Councilman Vincent Palizzi, myself, Bonnie Katz, Chair, Public Works. We have Joe Girardi, we have Scott Livermore, and I think Dave Columbine. I think you're present from the city. We have Mike Miller and Eric Smithgall from the Water Authority, and Janice Frank for City Clerk, and also Chris Black, our IT person. We're here today to discuss some excavation streets from the Water Authority and to discuss what we're going to do about this. I'm going to open the floor to, I don't know, are we going to do this Joe Girardi or are we going to do this with Scott Livermore? Somebody's better.
How's that? There you go.
Okay,
Yes.
there we go.
Sorry about that. Yeah, no, typically we handle these through the codes department because basically what happens on the street excavation, so everybody's aware of it. Anytime the street cuts in the road or it's a trench for a long distance, that's handled through Dave. Dave does all the inspection work on it, making sure the backfill's proper, making sure they're doing all the different materials. Once that's all done, then typically Dave will go out and figure out the length of the material, the length of the cut and so forth, giving that information to Scott and giving that information to John Sanders. And at that point, the road would need to be paved by the end of the paving season. If not, sometimes they'll piggyback. We call it piggybacking with the city. And then the city will do maybe a whole road instead of just half the lane width to get a better project. And then that time, we usually ask for a request to extend that time over the moratorium and then start that paving coming the following spring. Okay? So that's typically how that works. So I'll handle the resolutions. All right.
Gotcha.
What you have before you is this Williamsport Municipal Water Authority will be doing 5 large projects this year. They want to start on 2 of them. And they would like to start these 2 during the winter months, which there is a moratorium. Basically, Public Works has the ability to waive that moratorium and put a recommendation into City Council, and City Council can approve it so that they can start work in the winter months. And then what you have before you is the first one is a resolution for let me see, it's a Cliffside, I believe. No, Walnut Street Main project. Okay. They like to start this work as soon as we get approval through council. I have attached a copy of the area where that work's going to be done. What we end up doing is, of course, the standard resolution where we have all the whereases. The one whereas that's important is that we will require that the cuts to match the existing base course or a minimum of 6 inches, which is greater to the top of the road surface. Until such time when the base material is no longer made, then we require 4 inches of high performance coal patch to the top of the road instead of just standard coal patch because it lasts longer, a little bit more durable when the plows hit it and so forth. And again, this project would start at that time. We don't want to see stone in the pit. We want to see gravel because the stone's just going to wash away, push around. So this is the reason why we put that information in there. I do believe Eric from the Water Authority is on. If you have any questions of him, I'm more than happy to answer any questions, Dave or Scott. So that's what I have in front of you. Sorry I didn't get this to you till now this morning, but I got the resolution requested at 10 o'clock on a Friday. I didn't have an opportunity to get everything prepared at that time. I will get it on council's agenda for next Thursday. From my understanding, there will be a meeting for next Thursday.
Right, the 16th.
Yep. So this way, then otherwise they would have to wait until almost January 18th to start the work.
Right. No, once we discuss this, like you said, we, Vince, did you get the resolution?
I sent it to Vince earlier this morning and also Mr. Banks.
I'm sorry, but Dave Banks isn't, he couldn't make the meeting tonight, this afternoon. Vince, did you receive the email?
I did. Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you have any questions here?
Not at this time. I understand the urgency for trying to get this through, the reason for trying to get it through and get it done. I certainly, like Mr. Girardi said, we do have a moratorium for cuts in certain times, but given certain extenuating circumstances, we can grant that to go through. And I think this is one of those extenuating circumstances.
Well, it's also happening up near our neighborhood too, Vince.
That's right. Last year it happened in my neighborhood, so it's the way it works sometimes. But at
I
the end of the
know.
day, at the end of the day, you get a beautiful road.
I
That's
know
what
we
everybody
do.
needs to understand. The road's completely done nice, and you got a nice road for many, many years to come.
Mike, do you have anything to add to this?
Oh, I just appreciate the city working with us on this. We've had a good working relationship on doing this each year. And as you know, our board and the staff here has prioritized an aggressive water main replacement capital project moving forward. On this one, particularly Walnut Street, since that's what we're talking about, we've had 2 main breaks there recently. So people have seen us out there, and we'd like to button up that problem. We know it's a problem area and we'd like to fix it properly. So that's why we're asking to move right ahead with this, because we've been back there twice in one weekend. So thank you for your support on this.
Okay. As we go through this I think at least once a year, don't we, Mike? Where we do get projects at the end of the year like this, but they are necessary. I do have a question for Dave Columbine. Dave, how are we making out with everybody from the Water Authority, handing over all the receipts to you so you can double check everything?
Well, if you want, Bonnie, I figured we go through these 2, and then under new business, we have a few things we'd like to discuss, and hopefully at that time we can answer that question. How's that?
Okay.
Yeah, we'll take care of the second resolution.
Yep. If
Okay.
that's all right. Yep.
Okay, sounds good to me. All right. I need a motion for this events for this resolution.
So moved.
I'll second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, on to the next one.
Yes, what you have before you is a, again, standard resolution concerning working during the moratorium period. This is for the Cliffside Drive main replacement project. I have attached, of course, the letter requesting these 2 projects was attached with this. Plus you have I believe it's a 4-page or 6-page showing the actual layout, where the road's at, what road they're doing, and the location of all these things, which the Water Authority supplied me with. So I have that attached to it. And again, it's the same resolution. We like the high performance cold patch instead of the standard cold patch. It holds up better during the winter. And again, if something were to happen, we would notify, like if a section of the road popped up for some reason, we would notify the Water Authority and they would go back out and repair that area. Okay, so we do have that in the actual ordinance itself. Okay, so if you have any questions of myself or any of these gentlemen here with me, I'm more than happy to answer them.
I'm trying to read this off my phone, and I'm going to tell you, this has been very difficult.
Yeah, it's tough off the phone, that's for sure.
And it's, like I said this morning, when this came down, I started reading this. Vince, do you have any questions?
No, I do not. Not at this time.
Mike, would you like to add on to any of this?
I can jump in, or Eric can jump in. I think more specifically, if you're trying to read on your phone, you're going to see the main work is on Cliffside, and it bleeds to Roderick and Dunbar too a little bit. So it's that one big project area up there.
Right.
Okay.
That's why, Mike, I like the attachments of the actual drawing, because it gives you the areas where it branches out, because it may be called Cliffside Drive, but it also has a lot of offshoots and so forth in different areas. So
I'm asking Janice to do hard copies for me for Thursday night so I can really look at these and look at them better.
right. And I'll get all this information to Janice, and typically she does do it electronically. And like you said, Bonnie, she can actually get you some hard copies of it too.
Yes, I would appreciate that. Like I said, I've been trying to do this off the phone since this morning, and it's been kind of eye straining.
As a side note, our contractor is Ronca, and I think they've been working very well with city officials too, and doing that. They've done a very nice job for us. So we're hoping they'll continue that good working relationship with your officials as well.
Well, we've been doing this for quite a while now, Mike. you know, we've had a good working relationship, which I'm really pleased about, that we've been able to overcome a lot of problems and situations to the benefit of both the Water Authority and the city, which I think is, you know, great. I see no other questions. Vince, I need a motion.
So moved.
Second, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, Joe, you're up again.
Yeah, and basically this is the very last one, and I guess it's number 2, any related items. I'll turn it over to Dave Columbine because he deals directly with the Water Authority more so than myself. There's a couple things that we need to straighten out and get some things basically put in the right order so we know where we're going from here. Probably what I'm going to do is request talking to Mike here, request a meeting with Mike, Eric, and who else did you say, Dave?
Eric,
Yep.
possibly.
Point, I'm going to hand it over to Dave.
Gotcha. Go ahead, Dave.
Well, I just wanted to mention and bring up, and as Joe said, we'll probably talk about this a little bit in the near future, try to set something up, as he said, with the water authorities, so we can get some of this addressed. I'm just, from last year with the water authority, I was dealing with an employee of the water authority, an engineer, possibly engineer in training, but in any event, he left the water authority, so someone else was involved with permits. He was my main contact with discussing any permit issues, any permitting questions, any cancellations or void outs of permits that were duplicates, even involved with the submittal from the Williamsport Water Authority of random locations that they had permanent restoration completed. This was an item that was discussed, I'm going to say in 2015, about that time when the city had enacted an additional requirement with the utilities to provide a listing. That listing would be inclusive of address, permit number of the random locations, primarily random locations that were permanently restored by their paving contractor. And since that time in 2015, I worked with that gentleman for a number of years, and we were able to get it together so that at a suitable time frame, close to the end of the year, it would be submitted after they had their paving contractor go in and do the random permanent restorations. The permanent restorations involves base repairs, any base repairs that are pending, plus getting them milled out according to the specs and then topped. I met with another gentleman, Dave Mosteller, after the previous gentleman, Jake Fuller, once he left with the Water Authority. Met with Dave. We went through it. We had a meeting, discussed pretty much what I just mentioned as far as the progress and the mechanics of how it flows through to the city regarding the paperwork and the listing. I gave Dave back on September 10th of this year, I gave him a listing of all pending WMWA plus anything else on the sewer side that were pending items in regards to these permit applications. And when they take out permits, they are to complete the bottom section of the form, which is a drawing or a sketch that shows where the cut was made, shows maybe approximate footages from intersecting streets or from the house, if there's a home involved there. That gives us a pretty good description as to where the cut was made. From that point, then they are to put it on a listing with their paving contractor, put this on the listing for them to go on out there and perform the permanent restoration at their earliest convenience to get it done. Hopefully before the plants close, the way it's listed in the ordinance, before the plants close at the end of the year. So I gave him a listing, and that started from permits back in 11/20/20 to August 30/21. I've received a few completions at this point. The number of completions that I received from Dave has been in the area about 5 or 6, about half a dozen of them. But I still have quite a few that are pending. I estimate from my numbers and counting the permits that I have outstanding, probably about 60 in that range. that I'm still waiting for completions to be returned. And I'm sure that hopefully we have addressed with them, we brought it to their attention about getting the listing of locations, the random locations from them that were completed, permanent restoration. I haven't received that as of yet. I was advised that because of some ongoing things going on with the water authority, that I might not receive that until maybe a little later on this year, maybe possibly going into early 2022, once the construction season has dropped and lowered, and then that they had personnel available to compile the listing. But see, I have a problem with, I think these, in my own opinion, and as well as I think there are possibly several people within the city that feel we should be getting this information, and I should have it soon after they have completed doing the permanent restorations at these random locations. And I just think that it goes just way too long here, and I'm not really too pleased about having it going into the latter part of this year and into January sometime, maybe January or February. Maybe we'll get this information so I can close out these permits, so I can have completion sketches done on the permits that were taken out by the Water and Sewer Authority, and I can close them out and I can do a billing, but I don't do it until that time. And then there's also the review that I do once I have the listing of those that have been completed. I'll go on out and do my own review to check on those locations, and then complete it with by at that point, then I'm sending out billing and invoicing.
And if I'm correct on that, Dave, what happens is at that time, that's when actual, I'm going to say the guarantee starts as far as the time frame when they have to watch the road. If something happens, they're required to repair it at that point too. That's another thing that's important that happens. So if I'm correct on that, Dave, correct?
Yeah, once the billing goes out, then that's when the clock starts. It's a 5-year period of time that they are responsible for that cut. In the event that there's any decay or subsidence, or we have something that needs to be addressed, it's a 5-year period from the time that the billing is issued. So those are pending at this point. And I believe Joe was also waiting for 2 letters for a couple projects that were.
Yeah, there's a couple projects out there that I still have to talk to Eric about, that I need to get a letter from them requesting the extension of time, basically, since they're not done prior to. And I think some of this comes from the milling and overlaying is done by Streets and Parks and the engineer. We do the other portion of it. Okay. So in order for us to get that, even though they may be piggybacking with the city to do a better project, it still would be the Water Authority's responsibility to submit that letter, because it still really is their project. So I would need to have them go through that process. On these projects here, when I got the letter here this time, I believe they're basically going to be doing the same thing, Mike, I believe, on these as he did with the other ones, where you're going to be at the end of the year probably waiting winter and then having this milling and overlaying in conjunction with the city, correct? These projects you're doing here.
Yes, that typically is the process that we've found as well. As we ask you guys to include those in your paving project.
And it makes sense.
It's a very simple process that works mostly mutually to our benefit.
Yep. And it's beneficial to you, beneficial to the city. We get a better project. It's just that even though we're doing it, it's still the request should come through you guys, not us, because we're not going to request an extension of time. It's because it is your project. We should be getting that letter from you requesting the extension of time over the winter period of time, or the winter.
Wait, let me get this straight. And I'm sorry, probably would have been better to handle outside of a Public Works meeting, but you're asking us to send in a request letter for a time extension for work that we're asking to incorporate into your paving project.
Basically correct, even because it is still your project. You follow me? All you're doing is requesting that it be put in with the city's milling and overlaying projects, which makes perfect sense. But the chain should go through you guys, just like UGI, when they come through and they're going to be piggybacking with the city on a project, they'll put that letter of request in, requesting the extension of time over that, or requesting it to be extended till the spring, so that we get a better project, we get a better works and everything, but it would still be a UGI project, and it's still a Water Authority project, or it's still a Sanitary Authority project. at that time. Because if I'm correct, even let's say you mill and overlay and it subsides in a certain area, it's going to be still your responsibility to go back and correct that problem, not the city's. If it's in your trench, correct?
Well, you would be
We
the
don't waive
contractor,
that.
right?
Right. We don't waive that portion of it. That still would be your responsibility to repair that. So I'm saying the project's yours from start to finish. We're just adding it into our milling and overlaying for a better product and for a better price, if I'm
But
correct.
you guys hold the contract for the milling and the overlay.
Correct.
So it's your project.
I guess we could discuss that at another time. I'm gonna say, I agree that we disagree on that, and let's discuss it. I understand what you're saying, but if we're doing the milling
Yeah,
overlay,
this
it's our
would have been-
contract. All right,
Right.
and let's say a year afterwards, we get something happens and the whole thing subsides in a stretch of road. If I'm correct on that, that's not going to be the city's responsibility to go back and correct that problem. It would be the water authority's responsibility to go back to correct that problem.
Again,
That's one thing I guess we need to discuss, because that's what I don't,
Yep.
and I don't believe, if that's the case, I don't believe that the city may be knowledgeable. I don't know if Public Works is knowing that it's going to be our responsibility to fix that road, even though the moratorium process is under that work, if you understand what I'm saying. So, I mean, if the road subsides in a year, I believe we're going to call you. We're going to say, Mike, hey, this portion of the road's bad. It's sunk. We need someone to go out and look at it and repair it. Your response would say, then I guess you're saying your response to me would be, well, it's your project now because you did the milling and overlay.
No,
Yeah, we're going to have to talk about
no,
it, Mike, because
yeah, I'm right across the road here. So usually when I have,
yeah, I understand that. And like I said, that's why I'm saying to you, I was just bringing some of these things up today in front of Public Works. But I still think we need to sit down first to try to work out our differences, not differences, but difference of opinion on stuff.
Yeah.
So then we can come back to Public Works and say, okay, this is what we decided we'd like to do. Follow me? I mean, I think you in agreement, Scott?
I agree.
And I think Dave's in agreement, and I know Water Authority, you guys, Mike would be in agreement, so we can come up. So we have one solid plan going forward, okay? Because by you saying that, to me, I'm thinking this whole time that something happens, we have a moratorium on that road, you're gonna have to go back and fix it. But it sounds like you're saying, well, maybe not, because you're working with us on the milling and overlay.
Okay, I'm going to tell you what, I think the 5 of you are going to have to get together. And I think probably include John Sanders in this.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And to come to a conclusion and meet, and can we discuss this after the first of the year? How's that sound? Or do you want to get
That's
this?
what I'm saying. I just wanted to bring some of this stuff up so that Public Works was a little bit aware of what we're talking about here. And my opinion was with Dave earlier today, set up a meeting with the Water Authority, get the right people involved in that meeting. Let's sit down and hash out some things so we can come up with a solution to what we're talking about.
has there been a problem with any of the streets settling?
No.
Okay.
No. As far as like settling and subsiding and stuff like that, no, not at all. That I'm aware of.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not aware of any problem.
No,
Okay.
but I'm saying, though, there could come a day where there may be a problem. And if there is, at that point, what do we do?
Well, I'm going to let it up to you guys to set up the
Yeah.
meeting after the first of the
Yep.
year and then bring it back to Public Works
Yep.
to let us know the outcome. How's that sound?
Yep, and like I said, I try to be in conversation with Eric. I know Eric tries to be in conversation with me. Mike, I know we've tried to work together many times, and we have worked together many times very well. I'm just trying to see what the best solution to it. And like I said, while you throwing that out there, to me, I didn't ever even thought about that at this point. What happens in that particular case, if it were to happen? Because there are times that I do see subside on Lincoln Avenue, that one job up above there, even though it was after the moratorium, that did subside. And that would have been our responsibility because the moratorium period was over. But let's say that happened during the moratorium period. Who's responsible to fix that and pay for it? That's the only thing I'm trying to hash out now. And it's just like, you got taxpayers, we have taxpayers, and we're trying to make it so it's fair for everybody.
Well, get that straightened out. And I do want to go back to what Dave Columbine was talking about. I think, Dave, what you were saying is you lost your contact at the Water Authority.
Yes, I mentioned that earlier. Yes, I was dealing with Jake Fuller at the Williamsport Water Authority, and we had pretty constant communication regarding permits, handling permits. And when Jake left, that's when I was advised that Dave Mosteller had stepped in, and that's why I had a follow-up meeting with him to discuss what Jake was providing and the mechanics of the flow of the paperwork regarding the permit, excavation permits.
So are you having a problem with communicating right now?
I think the main thing I have right now, and try to wrap it up in a nutshell, is pretty much I have about 60 some random locations that are pending some information from the water authority advising me that these have been permanently restored on the random location side, that they've been restored. And I also am supposed to receive the permit form returned with the sketch down at the bottom that shows where the cut was made and some possible dimensions of where it is from the house or the intersection. So the city has an idea of where this cut had occurred. But I can't close out these permits, these random location permits, until I have the listing of where the random permanent restorations occurred, and with addresses with the permit numbers on them, so I can cross-reference and go right to the permit and then close it out if it's been permanently restored by their paving contractor.
Mike, Eric, could you check into this, please?
Yeah, Dave. Yeah, I can easily check in with that. I know exactly what he's talking about. Sounds like there's a breakdown in communication between our Dave and Dave Combine there. So I'll step in and we'll get that resolved so that he gets the information that he needs. That's not an issue at all.
And again, I want the water authority to know I'm not here to try to say anything bad about the water authority or anything like that. I think we have a good working relationship. There's just some things that need to be straightened out. So we got it from this point forward, we can go forward and just do it certain things a certain way. It helps us out in the long run. It really does. So again, this is nothing bad about the water authority. I just wanted to throw some things out and have a good conversation down the road here.
We haven't met with you guys with the water authority in quite a while, and I think it's missed you guys. Missed seeing your faces here, for goodness sakes. And it's better that we do keep on track with one another, and we do meet once in a while to clear up anything that's in our minds that needs to be settled. So I'm going to leave it up to you, Joe, to set the meeting with Mike and Eric. Okay.
Sure, absolutely.
And then bring it back after the first of the year, and we can go from there. And Eric, thank you so much for trying to settle this with the lack of communication right now, the breakdown for Dave Columbine. I mean, he keeps perfect records. Dave Columbine keeps perfect records. You know, God love him. And we appreciate what he has to do. And I think you can understand it's a tough job sometimes. It really is. Other than that, is there any other questions from either side here today?
Hey, Bonnie.
Yes.
I just wanted to mention, I think I'll just rag on the coattails here from what Joe had mentioned about the letter of extension seemed to be a question. Mike, you had questioned what this extension letter description or definition is. Let's just bring up a case in point. We got Water Authority did some work up on Upland. That also included a portion there on Packer, right there by the monument where you go up the hill. And then you got a short section there on Upland Road. You also had that section of water main replacement up on Selkirk. And we are aware, of course, that the base repairs were done. But what's pending is to have the mill and overlay lane width performed. And of course, it's getting late in the year, and when that base repairs was completed, it was even becoming late to even get a contractor out there to do something of that nature. So I think what we're making reference to is like those two projects in point, in order for them to be, obviously they weren't completed by the end of the year, because that would include street, mill, and overlay. That because those projects weren't completed, there's a letter of notice to the city of Williamsport advising us that those two projects were not completed, but they did have base repairs, but did not have the half width, lane width, mill, and overlay completed. So therefore, the water authority would be submitting a letter to carry it over into next year put it on a city listing to get it milled and overlay for the lane width as per the ordinance. And that specifically is pretty much what that letter does, is it carries it over into next year, puts it on the city of Williamsport listing. If that's your desire and that's your wish, you let John Sander know, let us know that that's going to happen that way. And that's pretty much the definition of what that letter tells us. And it's primarily because the lane width, mill and overlay did not get completed by the end of this year.
Yeah, because that's basically what the ordinance says. Basically, the project should be completed prior to the paving season end, which we understand it doesn't happen all the time. It doesn't. We know that. And then just a simple letter requesting that, and then I'll put it in the resolution form and go through the rest of the steps at that point. So again, I think that's stuff we can sit down and talk about, hash it out, the authority in the city, and come up with a plan. And then, like I said, present it back to Public Works and go forward from there.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, any other questions or statements from either the authority or from our streets and parks? And God, we have codes, we have Dave Columbine. So is there any other statements? If not, we're going to go on to the second item on our agenda today. Any related items? Do you have anybody from the administration have anything to say? If not,